Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We are excited to have you talking about the DIREC initiative, which is a multi-stakeholder platform that is creating a new internationally recognized market instrument for distributed renewable energy. So my name is Tracy Tunge from South Pole, and I'll be the host of your webinar today. So I'll quickly go through some housekeeping rules. So throughout the webinar, you'll all be on mute. However, we encourage you to ask as many topic-related questions as you can. And please, you can do this in the question box in the chat, and we'll get to it at the dedicated session at the end of this call. If we don't answer your questions, please note that we will reach out to you via email. Also, this session is being recorded and will be shared in the next few weeks or so. So I'm joined by three amazing speakers. So first we have Paul Needham, who's the co-founder of Positive Capital Partners and the co-lead of the DIREC initiative. We have Jan Altenried, who's the project lead and senior energy advisor at South Pole. And lastly, we have Ricky Butch, who's the co-founder of Positive Capital Partners. And we'll be hearing a lot of exciting things about them shortly. So before we go to the agenda and the context of the webinar, I'll just introduce the topic a little bit and tell you why this is actually important. So as many of you have experienced in your daily lives, access to energy, safe, reliable, and affordable energy is key to improving the quality of life. And distributed renewable energy has been a big part of enabling this, not only in developing countries and emerging markets, but also globally. So these distributed renewable technologies and solutions must have a supporting enabling environment. And one key thing for this is finance. So as many of you, I'm sure, can attest, finance is a big issue. So raising affordable capital for DRE projects, while at the same time offering energy services that is even affordable to the most poor, is a major challenge and has been a major challenge. So this speaks to the innovation that is urgently needed in this DRE sector to catalyze new sources of finance. And today we will be telling you about how DIRECs can actually unlock those new revenues and new sources of climate finance. So on our agenda today, we have Paul, who will be telling us about the DIREC initiative and the specific challenges it aims to address. We have Jan, who will be talking about the advisory group and the key engagement opportunities. And lastly, we have Ricky, who will take us through the pilot project opportunities and give us a snippet of the DIREC technical platform. Lastly, we'll have a question and answer session. And again, please feel free to ask your questions and we'll get to them at the end of this. So without further ado, we'll hand over to Paul. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Tracy. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to take a few minutes, about 7 minutes, to introduce the DIREC initiative, our goals and motivations, and to highlight some potential benefits for DRE project developers. Our mission is to accelerate the energy transition in emerging markets, a mission that I know we share with many others on the call today. And we care about this because access to clean, reliable electricity delivers a very wide range of benefits. Some of these benefits go directly to the end users, of course, but some of these benefits of clean electricity go to people far away from the projects, far away from the solar panels across the world. Clean, carbon-free electricity delivers value for everyone, everywhere, because it contributes to climate stability. And although our mission may sound familiar, the strategy of the DIREC initiative is unique. We're working to mobilize corporate climate leadership to accelerate a just energy transition. We're building new linkages between SDG 7 and SDG 13, creating new ways to finance the end to energy poverty. The private sector has an essential role to play in the energy transition, and many of them are embracing that responsibility and taking climate action. Consider the Science-Based Targets Initiative. Over 1,000 global companies have signed on setting for themselves clearly defined commitments to reduce emissions in line with the Paris Agreement goals. Consider also the RE100 movement, where global companies are committing to power their global businesses with 100% renewable electricity. With over 300 members operating in 175 markets, these companies have annual energy demand for 330 terawatt hours of electricity. These are corporate-led pledges. The Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative is different. It's an international group of asset managers, major investors, that have committed to supporting the goal of net zero by 2050 or sooner. These investors represent $43 trillion of assets under management. And these are not empty pledges. These companies and investors are committing to bold new targets, committing to action plans, and committing to report annually on their progress. Over the next 2 decades, we will witness an historic repositioning of capital towards a low-carbon economy. And yet, set against this very upbeat picture of rising climate ambition and climate action, we must face the persistent and vexing problem of expanding access to sustainable energy in developing and emerging markets. Can we move on to the next slide, please? We're not on track to achieve SDG 7 by 2030. Nearly all of those bold corporate actions on climate and nearly all of that climate finance is being deployed in developed countries. Not enough is being directed to assist the energy transition in emerging markets. And for those of you that have been working in the energy access space for some time, you'll recognize some of these very practical challenges to scaling up investment in distributed renewable energy. What a missed opportunity. The global corporations and climate investors could have much greater impact, both climate impact and social impact, by investing in distributed renewable energy projects in emerging markets. You see that the climate impact of any new renewable energy project really depends on where it's being built and on the carbon intensity of the electricity that it's displacing. Adding new renewables to the European grid, such as many corporate power purchase agreements are doing, displaces on average only 255 grams of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. In the US, those corporate power purchase agreements displace about 402 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour on average. DRE projects in Southern Africa that displace coal-fired electricity or small-scale diesel generators are achieving 3 to 6 times the climate impact. So purely from a climate perspective, this is where global corporations and climate investors need to invest. The case is even stronger when we consider the opportunities to advance climate justice. The DREC initiative was formed to realize this opportunity and to build a bridge between SDG 13, climate action, and SDG 7, sustainable energy for all. The DREC initiative is a not-for-profit, multi-stakeholder initiative to create a new market instrument for the certification of distributed renewable energy. There are 3 major pillars of our work. First, the creation of the DREC technology platform, an open source platform that will help project developers earn more income and help global corporations and climate investors meet their own net zero targets. Second, market development. We are engaging with DRE project developers, with standards organizations, climate investors, and sustainability leaders from global corporations to take their inputs and to ensure that we're designing a platform and an instrument that meets the needs of the market. And third, we're developing pilot projects to test the technology to demonstrate the utility of the new market instrument. A distributed renewable energy certificate, or DREC, represents 1 kilowatt hour of clean electricity generated. At a high level, using DRECs is a very simple 3-step process. First, clean electricity is generated. Remote monitoring technology is used to record and report actual energy generation. Then that data is submitted to the DREC platform via API for validation and certification. Once certified, a DREC certificate is issued digitally. And third, buyers, such as global corporations and climate investors, are able to purchase or acquire these DREC certificates to use towards their zero carbon energy targets. These transactions can take the form of new revenue for the DRE project owner, or could take the form of upfront investments by climate investors who effectively prepay for a future stream of DRECs. So as you can see, the DREC instrument is similar to a carbon offset, but it's been designed to be easier to implement with much lower transaction costs and designed to address the specific need among global corporations to source renewable energy attributes. We believe that DRECs, if well designed and widely adopted, could address many of the challenges in financing the end to energy poverty. Long-term purchase agreements from credit-worthy buyers can help bring revenue certainty to high-impact distributed renewable energy projects. The sale of DRECs to global buyers could provide new hard currency revenue streams, mitigating some of the FX risks for global investors. The DREC platform, which will be open source, will lower the transaction costs of aggregating large numbers of small systems and projects. And overall, improved project economics combined with lower risks could help mobilize more domestic lending. None of this is yet fully proven. We have a lot of work ahead of us to build this market. And of course, we hope that you will decide to be part of the process. So how might you get involved? Well, first, you could sign up to learn more. We'll keep you updated with our newsletter and future webinars, etc. Second, you could register your company and projects with us. We're actively speaking to companies and climate investors now. So registering with us will ensure that you hear about any new revenue opportunities first. And third, you could join the advisory group to help shape the future development of the DREC instrument. So I'm going to hand it over to Gian next, who will tell you more about the advisory group and the engagement opportunities there. Over to you, Gian.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to talk a few minutes about the governance of the DREC initiative and also about the engagement opportunities as Paul introduced. From the get-go, it has been an essential part of our strategy to drive a multi-stakeholder process. We can't build a market just on our own, and of course, there's been important emphasis on engaging widely to ensure that we capture multiple perspectives, to ensure that we create a solution that really solves important problems for multiple stakeholders across the market. What you see here is a selection of a few partners who we've talked to from various sectors, such as finance providers, investors, and financial intermediaries, but also corporate buyers who have engaged with their corporate renewable energy transition, also in various fields bordering energy access. Catalyst organizations and associations have helped us across various work streams and work packages of our development so far to reach the right partners, to take the right perspectives. DRE project developers have partnered with us early on to provide the right insights into how this basic architecture needs to be shaped in order to cater to the right needs. But also technology providers engaged in energy access and distributed renewable energy solutions have collaborated with us to bring us as far as we have been. And lastly, of course, the standards have always been a core partner group of ours, as it was clear to us that we don't want to reinvent the wheel and launch a new standard, but to facilitate the connection to existing standards such as the IREC the IREC on the renewable energy certification side, or the gold standard Vera Sustain Cert on the carbon side. So how do these fit together? You see here a rough overview of the governance structure of the DREC initiative, where the stakeholder groups that I just mentioned are listed here on the bottom. The hands-on work is coordinated through the Secretariat by SAFPOL and Positive Capital Partners, as represented here on this call. And we are receiving support from the steering committee, where selected market experts and some of our founding partners are represented. We are now intending to launch the advisory group depicted here on the right, where we want to enlarge this area of information and input to the developers, to the project financiers, and to even more reg buyers. So this advisory group is intended to provide active insights and information and to support the ongoing creation of the DREC instrument. The role of this group is roughly depicted in these 3 bullets. we'd like to have you to engage with us in the adaptation and the testing of the instrument. We need to have your experience, your expertise, and your network in order to support the advocacy and the establishing of this instrument in the market. This only is possible through the networks and through the contributions from participating partners. And lastly, to advocate the DIREC instrument and reach as many as possible in the energy access market. This is a core task also to kind of be a phase and carry the potential and the commercial impact that the DIREC initiative could bring to the sector outwards. So forms of engagement can be to be part in the DIREC advisory group. This would practically result in taking part in roundtable calls, in kind of specific interviews, one-on-one calls to provide these forms of input, as mentioned. But there's also a kind of lower threshold engagement avenue, of course, where you can take part in webinars and surveys, webinars such as this one, to stay updated, maybe engage in some interaction, occasional surveys, etc. And lastly, if you just want to stay informed of the progress, sign up to our newsletter and you won't miss a beat. At the end of this webinar, we'll share a survey form where you can indicate in what form of engagement you'd like to participate in the DIREC initiative, be it signing up for the advisory group or these two other options. We hope many of you support with your input and presence, and stay on top with us and accompany us on the development of this instrument. To cover some of the more technical aspects of what we have been developing, I pass it on to Ricky. Ricky, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, John. The objective of the DIREC initiative is really to design, deliver, and demonstrate this new certificate. And really, the way we see that unfolding is through a series of pilot projects, which will increasingly show how the DIREC can be used to facilitate new capacity deployment in emerging markets. Next slide, please, John. So we see the pilots at the initiative unfolding in three phases. The first is really what we call the proof of concept, and that is around demonstrating the core functionality of the DIREC platform. That is to connect with a handful of projects, capture generation data in near real-time basis, and issue DIREC certificates. Following that is what we have termed the demonstration project. This builds on the functionality in the DIREC platform, but then really connects a few high impact renewable energy projects with one or two corporate buyers. And the objective here is to really show how end-to-end a DIREC transaction can support a high impact renewable energy project and allow a corporate to meet their climate targets. But both of these projects really are focused around existing operational systems and showing how they can connect into the environmental markets. The last phase of the DIREC demonstration is what we've called the commercial pilot. And that really involves understanding how a variety of DIREC purchase mechanisms can facilitate new deployment, new projects in the ground, de-risk them, attract new capital, and allow developers to really accelerate their growth plans and build out their pipeline. And so you can see that our focus there is really around looking at projects that are in the future, that are most likely to be online sometime at the end of next year. Whereas with the demonstration pilot, it's more about connecting with high social impact renewable projects that have recently been commissioned. And as I mentioned with the proof of concept, is really demonstrating the technical platform with a handful of projects that already are operational. So let's dive a little bit deeper into both the demonstration and the commercial pilots. So as I mentioned, the demonstration pilot is really focused on this end-to-end transaction to demonstrate how the DIREC as an instrument can support high impact renewable energy projects. An example of this is the initiative's partnership with UNDP, specifically UNDP's climate aggregation platform. The CAP team has an initiative that is focused around electrifying rural health facilities. And the DIREC initiative is excited to collaborate with them to understand how the DIREC as an instrument can support their deployment of these high impact renewable projects. An example of this is the team's effort in Uganda. Phase 1 of the UNDP program in Uganda involves electrifying 11 rural health facilities. As you can see there, these are essentially inpatient facilities that offer a variety of services to the local communities. Many of them are grid connected, but as you might imagine, the grid is fairly unreliable in these locations. Diesel also happens to be present, but diesel is very expensive to run. And so unfortunately, most of these facilities tend to be operating without electricity. So the UNDP has come in and decided to install a solar hybrid system, which involves a 12 kilowatt solar system combined with a 36 kilowatt hour battery system to provide power essentially off grid to a section of these inpatient facilities. The idea of the DREC coming in is to support the ongoing viability of these systems. The UNDP has put up the capital upfront to install these systems. Once they start generating power, they will connect into the DREC platform. We will then generate DREC certificates and sell those certificates on to 1 or 2 corporate off-takers. Those proceeds will then flow back into the project and allow the team on the ground to continue to support the operations of the system. So from a demonstration perspective, again, this shows how end-to-end the DREC can support a high-impact renewable energy project. And for the corporate, it shows how they can engage with these types of projects in these regions and continue to meet their climate targets. And so as the initiative, we're quite interested to hear from you if you have projects that fit this category of being recently commissioned and involved in a very high socioeconomic impact situation. We'd love to connect those projects into the larger story around the demonstration and show how the DREC can be effective in supporting those projects on an ongoing basis. Now, as I mentioned, the proof of concept and the demonstration pilot really focused around existing systems. But we think the real runway is around understanding how the DREC can facilitate new capacity deployment. And that really is the focus of our commercial pilot. Next slide, please, John. As part of the initiative, we have engaged with a variety of financiers and other stakeholders to understand how we can utilize the DREC as an instrument to drive new capital, to de-risk projects, to crowdsource more money, and to accelerate the deployment of new projects. And that may take a variety of different mechanisms. And we, as an initiative, are keen to explore how that can best benefit you as developers and financiers, connecting in this corporate demand with the idea of generating new capital. And as part of that effort, we intend to explore a variety of different mechanisms. What I've shown here is actually a hypothetical example that we've put together to demonstrate how the DREC can be used in a variety of different means to, as I said, de-risk a project and improve overall viability. As you'll note in the graph on the bottom left there, you see essentially a cash flow projection of a project. But in this case, as I mentioned with the demonstration project, the idea is to generate DRECs once the system is operational. But a DREC purchase can also be made prior to the system being commissioned. And so you can see here on the graph on the bottom left, there's a small green bar, and that corresponds to a purchase agreement by a corporate, but the money's provided upfront. And that upfront money is then used to crowdsource additional capital and to de-risk the project. Once the project is operational and starts generating electricity, it connects into the DREC platform and starts generating DREC certificates that are then sold on the spot market. And that's what you see as the top green hats on the remaining bars starting in year 3. And in this hypothetical example, you can see there with the graph on the right that there is a pretty sizable financial impact if the DREC is able to be used in this combination of both upfront purchase and an ongoing basis. So prior to the inclusion of DRECs, the project probably had an IRR of around 16% as a return to equity. But as we consider the impact of the DREC, and in particular, again, the combination of the upfront purchase as well as the ongoing sale, we see a 750 basis point increase in the equity return. Now, of course, this is a hypothetical example. So a key objective for us as an initiative moving forward is to really engage with a variety of stakeholders to understand whether this is possible, what the realm of financial impact can be, what different mechanisms we can deploy to really drive new capacity. And so the ask really here is to engage with the initiative and share your project, share your objectives, the financial targets. We can then take that to corporate buyers, engage with them, and really find a situation where they have an ability to engage with these projects, meet their climate targets, and from a developer's perspective, the purchase of DREX is material in driving new capacity. So before we conclude, just a quick word on the DREC platform itself. A key element of the initiative is to reduce the barriers to entry for small-scale projects in the global environmental marketplace. And the manner in which we intend to do that is through the deployment of this DREC platform, which is essentially an automated system to issue DREC certificates that then subsequently will plug into the larger international standards and their associated systems. The graphics here on the left just describe the general flow of how this could work. Once a system is operational, using remote IoT technology, it connects into the DREC platform. The DREC platform then validates the data that it receives through the API, and then issues DREC certificates into accounts. Once those certificates are issued, then they become tradable and redeemed by corporates against their climate targets. A key element of the DREC is that it is not a new standard, but really enhances existing standards. And so there may be additional steps along the way to align with the requirements of those standards. For example, in the case of the IREC standard, there may be a local issuer who must issue an IREC after validating the data. And so in that situation, the DREC platform will automatically integrate with the workflow processes of the local issuer and ensure that the DRECs that are generated then flow through the issuer. They can then validate that and then issue the corresponding IREC. What we like to really do here is to engage with the wider community again. Since this is an open source platform, it's really meant for the benefit of the community. And so our goal is to co-create the system to ensure that it meets a variety of different needs. Right now, we are in the proof of concept phase, and the hope is to get the platform up and running in the next month or so, after which we will then go on a roadshow and demonstrate it. So we'd love to engage with all of you at that point as well. Of course, the key aspect of this is the remote connectivity. So it is important to ensure that the system can work with a variety of different remote monitoring technologies and configurations and environments. And so again, we're very keen to hear from you to ensure that as this system rolls out and is deployed, that it suits your needs and works with the conditions in which you operate. So with that, I will hand it back to Tracy to conclude.
Thank you so much, Paul, Jan, and Ricky, for that insightful presentation about the DREC initiative, what we aim to do, and how this connects the larger DRE sector. So for our next steps, as Ricky and Jan have mentioned, we would really like it to involve you going forward. So please get in touch to register your projects with us. We would love to hear from you. And I have just posted the link to that questionnaire. Please go to that questionnaire and you can tell us about the kind of projects you do, and also you will tell us what level of engagement you would like to have going forward. We will also send this out in the email, in the follow-up email. Also, the DREC initiative will be actively reaching out to developers, financiers, to discuss different aspects of the initiative as we shape the DREC market instrument. So without further ado, I can see people have some questions. So we'll go to the question and answer session. To give you time to digest the presentation, I'll get started off with a question that is usually most asked before in the webinars. So first, I would direct this question to Jan. Jan, could you please tell us a little bit more about how DRECs compare to CO2 offsets? And also, can the DREC platform be used to achieve this carbon credits?
Sure, thanks, Tracy. Yes, as most of you will know, CO2 carbon credits are denominated in tons equivalent of CO2. Many of the projects on the DRE have in the past attempted registration under a carbon standard, and will have found out evidently about the complexity and the very high transaction costs that are associated with the registration, with the validation, the issuances, and the monitoring under these standards. That has to do with the complex methodologies and the various variables that are required in order to monitor the performance of the ongoing operation and the verification of these monitorings. So this is one of the reasons why we want to test the DREC mainly on the renewable energy certification side of the economy, because of the much lower complexity, where it's basically a verified meter reading, which is then certified. It is, however, on our roadmap to have this linkage to the carbon standards established in the near future. These standards are already moving towards automated monitoring and automated verification, and we are actively exploring with these standards how the capability of the DREC platform can support and can facilitate these monitoring and reporting structures, which should ultimately bring down the transaction costs and make the access to these markets more affordable to DRE players.
Thank you so much, Jan, for that answer. So the next question I would like to direct to Paul is, what is the pricing mechanism for DRECs? And yeah, could you please tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The truth is we don't yet know. What we're really creating here is a new instrument and, of course, a technology platform to enable it. The price, so we're not completely in the dark. We've had multiple conversations with corporates. We understand what they've paid in the past for carbon in similar projects with these very high transaction costs. We understand what they're paying for RECs. And there've been some transactions recently with the Peace REC, which is a different instrument we could talk about. So we have some benchmarks, and we're learning about what the corporates value. And that has fed into the design of the DREC platform as well. So in short, we don't know. Just like there's no single price for a carbon offset and there's no single price for a REC, the prices will range depending on the value that your projects can create for a particular buyer. We're denominating the DREC in kilowatt hours, as has been noted. And one of the reasons for that is so we can provide a much more granular perspective on the actual impact. So we can record when and where every single unit of electricity was generated. And that allows the project developer and the corporate off-taker to tell a much richer story of the impact of that energy. And that, we hope, will help drive up higher prices.
Thank you, Paul, for the insightful response about the pricing mechanism. The next question I would direct to Ricky. So Ricky, if an installation is replacing candles or kerosene rather than a diesel generators, does it still qualify for DRECs? And for example, 40 to 80 watt systems. Could you shed some light on that?
Absolutely, thank you for that question. Part of the goal of the technology platform is to really extend the ability for small devices, including those 40-watt systems, to connect with the global environmental markets. Understanding that there may be some challenges around the remote connectivity. In many cases, these devices don't have bidirectional data flow. It tends to be unidirectional. But in those instances, we intend to provide a special provision in the DREC platform to allow for those devices to essentially still generate DRECs. And we intend to do so by way of proxy. As an example, if we're able to get payment events, we can, based on the capacity of the small scale device, we can then essentially derive what an expected generation can be. And so through that mechanism, we intend to hope that these small devices will be able to participate. And to Paul's point on the kilowatt hour denomination of the DREC, the idea then is to ensure that groups of these devices can more quickly monetize their environmental benefit. Because if we were to adhere to the existing zeitgeist around environmental markets of assuming a REC is a megawatt hour, it could take years upon years for some of these devices to be able to monetize that benefit. And so a key element of the platform is to allow small devices to plug in, to aggregate their demand, or their generation, excuse me, and then to issue DRECs against that. And in the event that there is no bidirectional data flow, to have a series of algorithms built into the platform that will allow it to derive that generation mix and then thereby issue DRECs.
Thank you so much, Ricky, for that. I'll direct this next question to you again, Ricky. So one person is, Catherine is interested to know, is there already a place or a white paper where they can go to find more about the technical requirements to generate directs?
We certainly will be releasing that in the coming weeks. We're just in the process of finalizing our proof of concept pilot, which I mentioned is really around connecting with a handful of projects and showing how the system can collect data in near real time, validate it, and then generate direct certificates. And so we hope to really publish that by the end of October. In that case, there will be a functional paper that will describe how to connect with the platform, a published API set, as well as a way to engage with the initiative. And of course, we're very happy to do so one-on-one to ensure that the platform is suited to connecting with a variety of different assets and a variety of different operating environments. So I would say stay tuned. And of course, we'd love to engage you, at that right time as well. Demo the project and again discuss how we can best integrate your projects into the system.
Thank you so much for that, Ricky. I guess another question again to Ricky as well. So Ricky, could you tell us, you told us the POC will be functional soon. So when could you tell us a little bit more about the timelines for that and what we expect to see with that?
Absolutely. So the focus of the POC is really, at the moment, is connecting with a handful of projects. As I mentioned, getting data in near real time around their generation and issuing direct certificates. At the moment, the plan, the default in the system, if you will, is to issue certificates on a daily basis. And so that means being able to collect generation data on an hourly or perhaps every several hours to get that information into the platform. There is what we have called a digital twin verification approach, which uses essentially the metadata around the device to validate whether the generation that is being reported is what we would expect, given the location, the vintage, how it's been operating in the past. And from that point, we will issue direct certificates. And so the idea is to essentially automate as much as possible the ability to issue these environmental attribute certificates. And so the POC is really focused on that end-to-end story, the ability to collect information in near real time and issue certificates. Moving forward, the idea is to then add an additional functionality around the trading and redemption capability. And that will really come in through the demonstration pilot, which is connecting a few of these high social impact projects with one or two corporate buyers. And that will really test that element of the platform. And then last but not least, of course, is to then continue to evolve it and ensure that we can handle hundreds, if not thousands of devices on a near real-time basis. So we certainly hope that we'll build this functionality in stages. The key piece right now is to issue the certificate and show how it's being issued. Again, the platform is open source. So our intention is to ensure that this will work in a variety of different environments and be fully transparent to the ecosystem so that there's a level of trust in how the platform is actually issuing certificates. And then through the demonstration pilot, we intend to really build out the functionality around trading and redemption of those certificates.
Thank you for the detailed response, Ricky. That really lays it out. So that my next question will be to Paul. So Paul, people have heard a lot about PREC. So what is the difference between a PREC and a DREC?
Yeah, great question. So the PREC by Energy Peace Partners or PeaceRec is really a quality label that's attached to an existing IREC. So it's an additional, a PeaceRec is an additional layer of verification and quality check. Site visits are made to establish and verify the social and economic co-benefits of a particular project. So it's a very important, the PeaceRec is a very important high quality label on a often a larger scale renewable energy project. The DREC initiative is solving a problem earlier in the value chain. The DREC technology platform makes it much easier and lowers the transaction costs for large numbers of smaller DRE projects to get their energy generation certified in the first place. And DRECs can be transformed into IRECs, and then you could go to the additional expense of getting that project PREC certified, and then they come in and do that additional layer of verification for you. Some buyers, from our conversation, some buyers are perfectly satisfied purchasing DRECs. Some want DRECs transformed into IRECs with additional cost and an additional layer of verification. Some want an additional layer again and want those certified as PRECs. So these are different layers and levels of certification, and of course come with different costs. But our focus is on sort of earlier in the value chain and solving the problem of reducing the costs, the transaction costs of getting energy generation data certified.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. I think there's another question about how, I'll direct this to Jan. Have you considered any opportunity to use the Emirates platform to achieve further granularity, say at the hourly level?
Good question. So maybe that's also a question. Why did we build a platform from scratch when there's various renewable energy attribute tracking systems out there? The question really is that what we aim to build here is something that is kind of tailored to the needs of the DRE sector, where we have project types that have loads of smaller scale installation, where the capability of tracking our hourly production is A, not given, or B, irrelevant because of the scale for which ultimately an issued certificate will be used, which is the purchase of a large company addressing their scope 2. So we did take stock in assessing what platforms are out there and what capabilities they provide. And we did do kind of a landscaping of technology required, or the functionality and the specifications required specifically for that. So to answer the question, yes, we have looked at Emirates capabilities, and we are familiar with these registry and other registry types, also from APX and whoever is out there. But this all led us to developing this solution that we've currently done with in collaboration with the Energy Web Foundation, specifically catered to the DRE sector.
Thank you, Jan, for that answer. So I'm afraid we're running out of time, and if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to either me or any of the speakers. We are happy to answer your questions at any time. For those we've not answered your questions, please note that we will reach out to you via email. Again, as we said before, please feel free to to contact us. Please fill this questionnaire and tell us how we can engage with you. We would love to learn more about our projects. So thank you all for joining, and thank you for we've had a lot of interesting things from our amazing speakers. And also I will say thank you to our funders who make this work possible. We look forward to engaging with you in the near future. Thank you all.